Tariffs. Okay, so what happens with tariffs? So I'm not a trades expert by any means, but I'm sure let's just talk about it. I don't have anything prepared. I'm just going to give you my kind of stream of thought about what I think is going to happen and how terrible this is going to be for our marketplace. That being said, we didn't necessarily know this was happening up until, November, when tariffs became a big thing. Maybe a little bit even before that, but nothing like this was even on the radar. Before the U.S. administration 8 years ago, I guess now, was very happy with the new trade deal that was apparently the best trade deal. And now we got 25% tariffs, maybe increasing, maybe decreasing, depending on what happens with apparently border security, trade deficits, and illegal drugs and illegal immigration and all this sort of stuff that I think is actually just not really the real deal anyway. It's just to financially squeeze and get a better deal, which, I mean, in reality, that's probably what our government should be doing here, trying to get a better deal for Canadians. Now their government is doing it there and getting a better deal for Americans. So, number one, let's hope this is short-lived. Let's hope whatever we end up with, however these end up being implemented, however they file through our system, whether or not gas is carved out or whether or not oil is carved out, going one way or the other, let's hope this is short-lived. Let's hope our government doesn't do something stupid and totally crazy retaliate. I was just watching the CBC and they were talking about how this, if 25% is the way we go now for as far as we go, who knows how long that will be, then we end up in a spot where, we're going to see about 2008 GDP shrinkage, if you want to call it that. So something like 3.5 to 4% GDP shrinkage. And then if our retaliation is of equal amount, then we end up with 5%. So way worse than the 2008. Now, 2008 was not terrible for Canada, and it didn't happen for that long of a period of time, but it was bad. If that happens, what do we end up with? We end up with lack of funding for lots of projects, employment goes down. And that's what's going to be the biggest thing, which will hit our marketplace. It will absolutely hit values. This is a long time thing at 25% continuously. Values of real estate are going to get smashed in Canada. I just feel that way. Now, in 2008, it was a 10% decrease. 2008, though, the average home price was like $400,000 or something in my market, and now it's 1.4. So 10% is a pretty big hit. Let's just say that. That could be, however, put in a situation where a lot of your manufacturing jobs are gone and a lot of your higher paying jobs maybe stay around. All your government jobs are going to stay around, but that's not necessarily a good thing either. And then we're going to lead to a spot where, I don't know, I'm really torn up with this. Is the Bank of Canada going to see inflation and then have to increase rates, or they realize that inflation is all being imported and it's not actually us spending too much here, so they have to decrease the rates in order to make things more palatable, and you have to be able to afford things. So I can see rates coming down. I can see property values dropping. Sellers out there right now, if that's you, if you're selling your property right now, it's in your best interest to get this thing moving. Because I don't think we're going to see an upside here until this whole thing gets resolved, whenever that happens to be. But more than anything, the reason I wanted to get my thoughts out on this are the overall is our government probably hasn't done a good enough job in the past of representing our interests. That's simply what it is. So in the event that we can get this over, hopefully we even just make him happy and, give him what he wants. Heck, I would like tighter border security too, personally. I would like to not have fentanyl running through the streets. I would like to have all sorts of wonderful stuff going back and forth. I would like our defense spending to go through the roof, because I think we should have a military. I just think our government, whatever they do, they need to have a hard look at themselves and say, should we represent Canada, and should we get our economy moving by giving our resources to the world and selling to more than just one entity? They should. They absolutely should. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, except for our current maybe prime minister, maybe not prime minister, not for long prime minister. and we're going to end up with another prime minister that comes in, and he's going to be our prime minister for 6 months, I think, because at this point, I think personally, the NDP is going to prop up Carney whenever he comes in to try and get spending done, because short-lived memory, the spending that was done in the pandemic did not do well for us now. If we do that spending again 4 years down the road, we're just going to be in an even worse situation. That being said, if we can get this under control, if indeed border security is the issue and we can figure that out, and if fentanyl is the issue and we can make drugs illegal again, I think this would all be fine, and I think we'll be okay. But in the short term, there's going to be pain, and unfortunately, just the way the government's gone, I think in many cases we have one specific person to blame, and in other ways we've got our own people to blame, because those people are only doing what's good for them, which you can't blame them for doing. And unfortunately, for the last decade, we haven't been doing good for us. So I do think, just to cap this off, prices will be coming down. They were already coming down. Immigration targets are lower. Cost of living is higher. Unemployment was already a problem. This will lead towards prices coming down. Simple. How long? We don't know. When's recovery? We don't know. We don't know any of those things. But at this point in time, for instance, if you're selling your property in the market, you should probably consider now being the best time in the next 3-4 years, unless this whole thing comes out in the wash really quickly. But it's not going to be a great time over the next little bit. It's going to be tough. Rates are going to come down. If you have if you're a police officer, if you're a nurse, you're going to have lower rates and you're probably going to be fine. You're going to have lots of work to do too. So those people shouldn't matter. But if you're into manufacturing, if you're actually into pumping money into the economy, we're going to be in tough for a bit. So that's my thoughts on tariffs. That's my thoughts on what's going on. I just thought I had to get this off of my chest so you can understand, or maybe get a little bit of perspective where I think the market's headed in the next little bit. That being said, all that aside, if you're in the marketplace right now and you need a place to live, and you don't want to be in a spot where, you don't want to buy something because the asset value is going to go down. You don't really want to rent because you're in a spot where you want some stability out there. This type of a thing for me, if I wasn't terrified of losing my job, like if my job hasn't said, hey, this tariff thing means you're laid off next week, I would not hesitate, because I think buyers are going to be able to take advantage of this market. And they just may be able to take advantage of this market for a longer period of time, rather than maybe a year or two down, which we're already into 3 years down. But rather than a year or two down, maybe it's going to go another year or 2 or 3 or 4. We don't know. So that's my thoughts. I think it's in tough, and we should all be prepared to do what's best for us. So hopefully our government agrees.